Think that's loud? Yeah. Good morning. Today is Tuesday, October 7th at 9:05 a.m. With me to my left is Vice Chair Fran Spivey Weber. To her left, Board Member Didi Diadamo will appear in a moment. She will just appear. We'll beam her in. And to my right, Board Member Tam Dodak, and to her right, Board Member Stephen Moore. Jonathan, will you introduce the staff that's helping us today?
I will. To my right is Karen Turkovich, Chief Deputy Director. To my left is Michael Lawful, Chief Counsel. And assisting the board today is Janine Townsend and Courtney Davis.
Terrific. Emergency evacuation procedures. For those who don't already know, look for the nearest exit. If you hear an emergency sound, we gather up our belongings, we gather up our friends, and we walk carefully down to Cesar Chavez Park, which is across the street. The staff will be gathered down near 9th and or 10th and J. If you want to know when the all clear comes and you can come back in, you can join us. And the other thing is that this meeting is being webcast, and so two things are important. One is that you set your cell phones on stun so they don't make a lot of noise. I'm demonstrating. And the other is that you speak very closely into that microphone. The key is, even though we may be able to hear you, the people behind you may not, and the people certainly listening over the webcast may not, and we want them to hear every single word. So please do that. It's easier said than done. And with that, let's move to Sustained Superior Accomplishment Awards.
Yes. Barbara Evoy is going to present a Superior Accomplishment Award first.
Good morning. So today we have a special award from the Division of Water Rights for Erica Garcia. Erica, could you please come up? This is, as always, one of the most delightful parts of the job, so I'm thrilled to be able to do this. So in my my constant pursuit of the mangled metaphor, I do want to mention that the last year or so in Division of Water Rights has been a lot like going to the Wizard of Oz. It has been very tumultuous, to say the least. We've had lots of activity going on, a whirlwind of controversy, kind of like a tornado. We've had many demonstrations of bravery, courage, and brains as we move through mysterious fears and even a couple flying monkeys or two.
I like that.
It's but what it's felt like. But you know, through all of that, there has been a distinctly a woman behind the curtain. And Erica is the one who is moving all the gears, all the levers, all the pulleys. Erica is making it work. And so while we're off on the glamorous film career of going down the yellow brick road, Erica is the one who is keeping us going. And this is an amazing feat for such a chaotic time period that we have. And I just want to sincerely say how much we appreciate her work. It wouldn't happen otherwise. Erica is in charge of personnel, contracting, fees, our water rights, 100 years of water rights files that are in the file room downstairs. Some of them are crumpling with age and use, and she supervises all the people who handle the public contacts in the file room. It's an amazing litany of things. All the water reports that come in, they handle them. They deal with a lot of people who are having either trouble or need hand-holding and help through the process. And Erica leads her staff with a very much of a customer service attitude and does a great job at it. And so I could send her home, but that wouldn't do because I need you here. So I do, the best we can do is to make you queen for the day. It's a special tiara just for you.
That's a good one.
And you can crown yourself. It has more of that Miss America feel when you put it on you. So, so we do have, of course, the traditional, beautifully wrapped certificate. Thank you. Once again, she's being helpful. And the check. So congratulations, Erica.
This doesn't look right now. Okay, let me take two here.
And next up, we have Rich Brewer.
Okay, there we go. So, as the Acting Director of the Office of Information Management Analysis, I'd like to present an award today to one of our employees who works with our California Integrated Water Quality System. Now, information systems in the board are only as good as the information that's put in and how we use it within the board itself. And in this case, Aaron is one of those great technical people that can bridge between all our programs in the boards and how the information is used and how we get our business done. And one of the projects she worked on was connecting our administrative civil liabilities system to our financial management system. In other words, key part of our board is if we have enforcement actions and we can collect money, that's an important part. But more than that, Erin has been part of many efforts where, once again, she understands our programs, our business with permitting, and the quality of the information we need to make those decisions. And Erin has shown over and over again her ability to work with the different programs in the board and make sure it connects it with our data. So I'm pleased to, Erin, you want to come on up? Pleased to present you this award today. Thank you so much, Erin.
That's a nice way to start the day. Thank you. Next, we have public forum. This is when folks can speak to us on any item that is not on the agenda. No cards, all right. No minutes to adopt. And do my colleagues have any board reports to make? Fran, you have quite a bit, don't you?
I've been busy. I'm tired, actually. Among I just have these in chronological order. I attended a meeting on drought and governance at Stanford University recently, and there was a Skype half day with Australia and talking with them about lessons learned. Among the things that they brought up was that they had a 13-year drought, big time, bad. Then they have had 5 years of rain. And the interest in the public, even though the public, it's only 5 years ago, the interest in doing something more on preparing for future droughts has started to fade. So, lesson learned for all of us. In Los Angeles, I attended with TAM a meeting of environmental justice and local water agencies and state agencies, as well as regional, the LA Regional Board, to discuss how we might pursue stopping the polluted plumes in the groundwater from moving. And among the things that have happened since we first started meeting, which was a year ago, is that there's more money, not enough money, but more money to address this issue. And Tam and I will be working together with the local environmental justice and agency folks on moving forward on that, and hopefully stopping the plumes from moving and then starting to do some cleanup.
At some point when you're ready, I mean, the work you all are doing is phenomenal. When it's ready for prime time, it'd be good to do a whole presentation here on what you plan to do. I mean, whenever you guys are ready, I just think that'd be great.
When we have a true strategy that everyone has bought into, which I would think would be in early next year at the latest. I attended a meeting that a nonprofit organization, CFI, sponsors once a year on water with Felicia, and there were a number of legislators there. We talked about drought and groundwater, and again, Australians were there, so that was kind of interesting. Not much came from it, but Felicia did a fabulous job with a PowerPoint on drought, which is now going to be available on, I think, on our website actually. So that will be good.
Maybe we should edit the notes pages.
Maybe so.
Yeah.
It's going to be posted this week, so you should get at it.
Okay.
We also had a gathering of the regional boards for 3 days, and the focus here was on, substantively, was on groundwater and also on stormwater, but also wetlands, and was discussed, as was drought and the new water program. But the emphasis was on the talent that we have on our boards. Lots of effort goes into finding fabulous board members, and for all the 9 regional boards. And they have a lot of additional talents besides just serving on the boards. Many of them in their work have special talents. And so we were trying to tease out what options and activities they could start pursuing locally, regionally, that would enhance both what their boards are doing at the regional level, as well as what we are doing statewide. So that was very helpful. Steve and Felicia were there the entire time, and were able to help on the program. Tam and Dee Dee attended most of the time, and that was very helpful. Certainly, it was very important for the regional boards to get to meet everyone, and then staff put together a wonderful field trip, and all the logistics that go into doing the Water Quality Coordinating Committee, which is called WQCC. And I want to particularly thank Eric and Gail and Dorina for their help. And finally, yesterday I attended it's the Association of Environmental Professionals, which are the planners in our world. They are consultants. They are working in counties and cities, and they had their first conference ever in Tahoe yesterday, and And it was very interesting to meet with them, and they're very, I think they're going to be very, very good partners for us, because planning is the first step to taking action. And they, as much as anyone, want to make sure that their plans actually get used. And so we will be continuing to work with them. They are particularly interested in the revised in the updated county general plan, that the guidelines are going to be updated by the end of the year, and they wanted to know what they could do to encourage water to be more included in that general plan update. So we have met with OPR, and so we're going to pursue that. Thank you.
That was great. Thanks.
Well, I just want to start by thanking Board Member Spivey Weber for the fantastic job at WQCC. I was able to, as you say, sit in on a fair amount of it, and it was just fantastic. And you did a good job to keep things moving along.
She is a taskmaster.
Yeah, she is. Yeah, good subjects though. It was, and always great. I like to just kind of rotate around and get outside the regions that I'm liaison to and meet other board members, and it's just a fantastic opportunity for that. So thank you. I know a lot goes into planning it. I just have two things to report on. Yesterday, I was at the California Artisan Cheese Guild, and
Cool.
I was their speaker on drought. And this
Did
was
you get
just,
to taste?
I had to move along, so I wasn't able to participate in the wine and cheese event, but they were putting everything out, and it was, I wanted to escape the traffic. So, but good opportunity to meet with, I'm used to meeting with farmers, dairy producers all the time, but this is a very young group, young, enthusiastic, very creative. They had lots of questions about the drought, and the interesting thing is that they're mostly from Northern California, not many from the San Joaquin Valley, but very much impacted by the drought because of feed costs. So this is impacting, a lot of them are organic, and organic requires that you have 120 days in pasture. And so, because the drought has impacted them, some of them have lost their status. And then, of course, they're having to purchase more feed. The feed is very costly, and it is impacting the quality. So the quality of the product that they're getting, and this was news to me, the quality of the product that they're getting, the feed stock, is just not what it should be. And so it's impacting the butterfat content for the cheese, in fact, impacting the quality. So, I had something to learn there too. But the good part of the dialogue, I thought, was they're very much interested, looking beyond the farm, looking to what they can do, as domestic water users. We talked about a lot about our regulations, and they pushed us. They felt that we could even go further. So it was very encouraging to be with a group that was encouraging us to do more. The other thing I wanted to report on is that week before last, Board Member Dodick and I spent the day in Sacramento with the Regional Water Authority, the Sac Water Forum, and a variety of different irrigation or water districts. And we took a tour. We looked at meter replacements. We looked at we went over to Folsom, and the Corps of Engineers gave us a tour of the new gate project over there. So very exciting to see, the flexibility that it will provide in terms of operations, and at a lower cost than what was originally projected, which I thought was very interesting. They talked a lot about the issues that they brought before us, about the concern about operations. They have a fair number of ideas, but still need to be fleshed out a little bit more. But the exciting thing about that day was just to see the collaboration. No district mirrors the other. They're all so different, and some have groundwater, others don't. And the efforts that they're going through to try and share resources and look for projects that would help them with conveyance and greater operational flexibility so that they can share amongst themselves. So it was a good day, and I suspect everybody's been out there, but if anybody
It's great.
hasn't,
Great.
good tour to be on.
Yes, for my board report today, I attended this Central Coast Regional Board meeting on September 25th, 26th. A lot of it was focused on the Los Osos issues, and they did rescind the cease and desist orders that were on individual landowners due to the progress on the community sewer project. The regional board also discussed the status of the Los Osos groundwater basin, the overdraft there, and seawater intrusion issues. And so they've decided to approach and engage with the parties that are in an adjudicatory process for the basins to make progress on better managing the basin. It provides local water supply, and our staff, Eric Ekdahl, was also at the meeting, and he leads our groundwater sustainability unit, so it was good for him to see that information and that discussion. Another issue that the Central Coast Board was working on that I'd like our staff to be aware of, I think you are in the Office of Information Management, but you're probably aware that the management of environmental data on waters is something that Region 3 excels in. They have a program called Central Coast Ambient Monitoring Program, and they use web-based tools to communicate these data pretty effectively on their website, Central Coast. They did a nice presentation on what they're calling the Healthy Watersheds Initiative, which is a development of a report card type format on watershed health. They're engaging science peer review in this process, but I was just impressed with the web-based tools that they're using to really, create more of a real-time communication on the health of surface waters and groundwaters now in the Central Coast region. While I was in the Central Coast region on September 25th, I met with the City of Santa Maria staff and I toured city facilities to learn about their efforts to implement integrated planning framework. They kind of borrowed that concept from the EPA, but it's the same themes we talk about with IRWM and that sort of thing. But it's to really integrate in their management the water supply issues, the groundwater basin management, the wastewater and recycled water component of that, as well as the stormwater runoff. And then they're surrounded by agricultural areas, so there's opportunities to deal with both agricultural and urban runoff simultaneously. And we've provided some grant money to them for a bioreactor treatment of combined agricultural and urban runoff. So I toured some of those facilities, and this will help them comply with TMDLs and just deal with things in a more integrated fashion. They have a unique setting, in terms of a very sandy aquifer. They're not actually, they have nitrate issues there, but they're not experiencing the same alarming level of overdraft. It's interesting because of just the resiliency of that particular aquifer in the Santa Maria Valley. While down there the next day, I, through Western Growers, met with farmer Craig Reed of Bonapac Farms and toured their facilities in Santa Maria and the San Antonio Valley, and learning firsthand about challenges, as the ag order in Region 3 is implemented, some of the challenges that folks are enduring, but also, the challenges of balancing the food safety expectations of the buyers with the need to have water resource sustainability and all those things we're championing in terms of riparian corridors and taking advantage of nature, doing the heavy lifting and dealing with nitrogen and carbon and all these things. So, after this encounter, I was very impressed with the efforts of the farmers down there, and I just was struck by this opportunity that we have for partnership, in terms of the water boards and the agricultural interests, and really creating some even market-based incentives, to enhance sustainability of water resources with agricultural activities and unite on these issues that we have a lot of in common. And I think of the wine growers and their sustainability certification, and so Western Growers is interested in pursuing this. So, for what it's worth, I've told you in the last board report, this is an issue I think is of statewide significance, and would be happy to help participate in those discussions and move that issue forward. And finally, yes, I have been busy too, certainly want to thank Fran for her leadership on the Water Quality Coordinating Committee. I thought it was an exceptional 3 days, and thank staff for the great field trip. We learned a lot. But then just before that, I met on September 29th. I attended and participated in the Bay Area Regional Water Reliability Enhancement Workshop at the invitation of Board Member Nusha Ajami of the Region 2. It was hosted by the Woods Institute at Stanford, Water in the West program, and Renew It. You ever heard of that one? Yeah, I can't even read this. It's urban water infrastructure renewal effort, attended by all the major water purveyors in the Bay Area. And so that was an interesting discussion where we really looked at a lot of the same integrated governance questions, and they were exploring the idea of a independent system operator concept for the water system. I think, the PUC folks, Steve Ritchie said, yeah, that won't quite work based on, contractual arrangements and everything else that we have, in the Hetchy type system. But that said, there was some good creative thinking going on there, and we can continue to stay plugged in to those efforts because they relate strongly to the issue of fragmentation of water governance and something that we're continuing to stay on top of. Okay? With that, that's my board report. Thank you.
Oh, great.
I see Ms. Turgovich, Mr. Bishop looking up because, as you know, I tend to use my board member reports to give them assignments. Actually, I wanted to do 2 follow-up items. A few meetings ago, I mentioned that I was a bit concerned about the performance measures that were reported in the Executive Director's report for the Division of Water Quality. And since then, I had a chance to meet with Ms. Turgovich, Mr. Bishop, and Deputy Director Victoria Whitney to discuss that. And it was a very productive discussion. Ms. Whitney, in particular, I think, proposed some new approaches towards performance measures that I strongly support. One of which, and I asked her, of all the things she proposed, what would be her first priority? And she said to look at developing and I think she's an engineer too, which is why it's so near and dear to my heart, developing flow charts and mapping out the various processes that are involved in various permitting and other activities that DWQ staff is involved in. I think that's an excellent idea. I think it's excellent for part of staff development and training, succession planning, but it's also excellent from the perspective of looking at these processes and determining where we can streamline some of the timing and reduce some of the costs. And so I would strongly encourage whatever support she needs to start that. And my request is at least one of the first processes that DWQ staff look at would be at the process for issuing concurrence letters to well operators when they request exemption from groundwater monitoring for their well stimulation projects. I've had some meetings with some folks who are concerned about not understanding what the process is and how we collaborate with DOGGR, with the regional water boards in issuing those concurrence letters. So if nothing else, I think just being able to articulate what that process is, and as always, looking for opportunity to streamline would be very important. So I would make a request that one of the first processes you look at be that. And also, I see a lot of stakeholders here in the room. I'm sure they'll have some suggestions. There are favorite topics as well, which leads me to my second item. The board at our last meeting passed or adopted the new fee schedule. As always, every year it's extremely difficult. And we had a very lengthy discussion with respect to, for example, the dairy WDR fee discussion. And just as we did last year, we directed staff to go work with the stakeholders. And I think, I take some responsibility. I think we all do, because last year we made that direction to staff, and then we sort of got busy with other things. Hence, ended up, I think, this year with the very lengthy discussion that we did. And so at the last board meeting, we directed staff to come back to us in December after doing some outreach with stakeholder to propose what their next steps would be in terms of stakeholder engagement for the next year's fee schedule. So my request to staff is to include in the executive director's report, updates for this month as well as next month on how that's coming. And since I see Mr. John Russell sitting there in the back, our new Division of Administrative Chief Deputy Director, I also asked him, as you schedule your meeting with stakeholders, please provide those updates in the executive director's report. But also, if you could share with us when those meetings are. I guess I shouldn't speak for the other board members, but to the extent that I'm available, I would like to participate and just attend and just hear some of the discussion. And so I guess my request to staff and to all of us is to be a bit more engaged this year in terms of the fee discussion and the work with stakeholders, and hopefully try to avoid the last minute kind of discussion that we had to engage in this year.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I think part of it's not all on John. I think that's a part of what we did wrong. I think it's got to be a joint effort with DWQ as well as Eric's shop to think about how it dovetails with the cost of compliance work, because the questions had to do with how much it costs us to do what we're doing as well as streamlining. So that's the process I know you all are going to come back to us with in December, and so it just needs to be a more, I think, integrated set of conversations so we can see where we are and see how we can engage throughout, because it put them in a funny box to hand it off to the folks who have to do the math and make sure it pencils out. So, and definitely call on us to be a part of it. We don't want to dump it on you and then disappear. I think that's something that we all need to be engaged in. There was one other thing, but if I think of it, I'll get back to you. All right, I'm not going to add a lot. I spent a lot of the week with Fran last week. The only thing I would add, something I had flagged last week that I was going to do and then did, was fascinating. It was annual Native American Day at the Capitol. I don't know how many of you were able to go by. It was much bigger and rather impressive. Our team had a really huge booth. Staff had great esprit. We're talking to kids, adults, everyone about what we do. We even had a woman who weaves things from tules, who did a whole presentation, a series of presentations on the use of tules and the issues around that. I thought they did a really extraordinary job. The night before, I was honored to be able to speak at the Tribal Chairs Dinner, and that the governor spoke later. It was members of the legislature, et cetera. It was terrific, and it was mostly that meeting of the chairs speaking with each other, and it was apparently the first large gathering of tribal chairs from across the state since the 1950s or 60s. So it was truly historic, and really honored that, because their theme was water is sacred, I was able to come, and Laura King Moon from DWR also spoke, and so we were quite honored to be there. That was a highlight of the last couple of weeks. There's a number of more tribal presentations coming up next week. The Region 9 Tribal Operations Committee and annual tribal conference are happening. Even though that's federal, it is a gathering place for tribes across California, and so various state agencies also use it as an opportunity to meet with tribes as long as folks are coming in. So I'll be attending that. Mariana Aoi is going to be doing a presentation as well. I'm an evening speaker, and we are also on Monday doing a follow-up from the Water Summit, which is the biannual meeting that DWR expertly puts together. And one of the follow-ups from last year's was a request that we do again our training on state water rights law for tribes, so they understand what our system is, whether they're federally recognized or not, understanding. So that training will take place in this building on Monday. So if folks want to stop by and say hi, I'm sure that'd be appreciated. I'll open it up, and then there's, I think, a reception at 4 o'clock at the end of the day if anyone wants to join. So that's it for now. Otherwise, it's a bunch of stuff. Why don't we move into the uncontested items? We have items 3 through 5, I think 5, are potentially uncontested. Do you have any cards? As interesting as they would all be, and we would love to hear about them here in the interest of speed, do I have a motion?
Second.
All right, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Great, okay, those carry. Let's move to item number 6.
And Karen Turkovich will give an introduction to this item.
This is the monthly drought update, and we have a combination of presentations for you this morning. We're going to start with John O'Hagan, and I understand that we are going to be joined by the Department of Water Resources and the Bureau of Reclamation, and then also Les Grober with the division will also be speaking about some of the latest petitions and orders.
Good morning, Board Chair Marcus and board members. As Karen said, I'm John O'Hagan with the Division of Water Rights. And as Karen said, we have several presenters today, so I'm just starting off, and then I'll introduce the next ones. My presentation is on a recent letter that the Executive Director signed regarding how the board will be planning to lift curtailments during this fall season. Now, this plan is with the understanding that there may be prolonged dry conditions. The letter that is dated October 3rd, 2014, and it went to holders of over 9,000 1914 water right holders. Now, the letter identifies a short-term and then long-term plan. The short-term is that we will be lifting curtailments during significant storm events in order to allow parties to collect or divert water during those prolonged or those substantial rain events. Parties who are noticed, they will only be noticed by email that are subscribed to the board's website and or monitoring the drought webpage. We cannot do this with letters like we just sent out on the 9,000. This is a real-time reaction to storm events. Staff is monitoring forecasts for weather, stream flow conditions for each watershed to make sure that we make informed decisions to identify what indicator we will use and or trigger to either initiate the letter or rescind the letters. Stakeholders have been invited to provide us input on those triggers. As I said, after a precipitation event that we feel is substantial, we will send notice only via the email system. During this time, all post-1914 water rights that have been curtailed would be lifted, and they would have the opportunity to divert water. However, they are still subject to all terms and conditions of their water right. That means if their season of diversion isn't covered, they could not divert. If they have bypass flow conditions, they would have to make those bypass flow conditions. If they're subject to term 91 curtailment, they would still be subject to that curtailment. Failure to comply would be subject to enforcement. At the same time, the staff are continuing their long-term analysis based on supply and demand to determine when curtailments can be permanently lifted in these watersheds. As you know, we have lifted some water rights in the Eel River system, and we continue to monitor all watersheds for that same possibility.
Right, and for those people who don't live and breathe curtailments, some of those changes came because you had different information at the gauges about supply. Others come because demand tailed off, so there is enough water then for the remaining users of water.
That is correct. We get information from the supply, which is stream flows and rainfall events, and we also have a continuous line of our demand, which, as you pointed out, is decreases. There's been a decrease in September, October, and it will continue. So we are looking at that relationship between available supply and demand. And I think that's all my presentation I have for today. And if you have any questions, I'd like to answer those before I introduce the next speaker.
Just one. There will inevitably be the person who simply does not have internet capability. What are you going to do with those?
They will not be aware of the opportunity to divert.
Okay, so they will have to find someone who will collect their information for them and give them a call? Is that what what you anticipate?
These are,
That's right, they'll have to find a friend,
these are
find a friend
the-
who does.
yeah, these are short-term window opportunities, and we are providing and being transparent of when we can activate this and deactivate it, so we do not have the opportunity to phone call all diverters that are potentially receiving this benefit.
Chair Marcus, if I can add to that as well, that I have talked with some of the stakeholders regarding the letter that went out on Friday and was electronically and was mailed on Monday. And many of the stakeholders that are a part of trade organizations or other representative organizations have taken it upon themselves as well to notify their members immediately. And so I think we saw Friday's letter being transmitted broadly well beyond the electronic notification that we provided. So we're hoping that stakeholders will continue to provide redistribution of our notices and that all affected water rights holders will receive notification.
Great. I really appreciate the effort you guys have gone to try and take advantage of every opportunity for people to be able to divert water to storage. You've come up with an innovative way of doing it, and I think that's great.
Right, and I have contacted the Farm Bureau Executive Director and informed of this information and provided him with this information, and he is going to, as Karen said, spread that throughout his membership.
Great. Great. Thank you.
Thank
Moving on.
you. I'd like to next introduce Bill Croyle from the Department of Water Resources, and he's going to give us an overview of what the department is doing for drought.
Thank you.
Sure.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Chairman Marcus and State Water Board members and staff and audience, my name is Bill Croyle with the California Department of Water Resources. I'm the department's emergency program manager, and for over the last year, I've been the drought manager. So we are coming out of our fourth driest year, extremely dry conditions, and last week I was at FEMA Region 9, and the federal employees were all excited about the start of the new fiscal year. Well, I'm like, we also just started the new water year. And we do need to start the new water year with high hopes of additional water than we've received, but we are planning for a dry 2015, to be clear. And so as I move through my presentation is kind of a quick update on where the department is, in the context of that we are planning for extremely dry conditions, and so everything that we're doing right now is we're hoping for a much better water year, but planning for a difficult year. Our forecast, as we move around the state here and working with our partners at NOAA, as well as our California Nevada River Forecast Center, we are looking for, say, in the next 3 months, based on the climate predictions, kind of a warmer than average in Northern California on probability, and slightly wetter in Southern California. And I think that's typical as we're seeing some of the monsoon weather that we've experienced recently. Along those lines, at this time of year, we've transitioned our flood ops type people out of our drought program back to the Flood Operations Center to get ready for flood season. And certainly we've had some serious floods here in California here recently in Southern California. We've also had some pretty wet weather in the northern corner of the state up in the Smith River watershed. So again, we're in this weird drought flood nexus right now, but I think it's important, the comments already made this morning with regard to the need to prepare for, and I would say extreme events, whether it's drought or flood. Right now, we've put the Flood Center on active notice twice during this dry period. And again, we're walking and starting our flood season October 15th. So with that being said, we're getting a lot of questions here recently as we move around the state, both in Southern California, Northern California. What's it going to take to get out of this drought? So our Hydrology and Flood Operations Office has been crunching the numbers with our climatologists and other professionals that we work with on a daily basis. And so in the context of what's it going to take to get this out of this drought is we're looking at like a 150% water year to kind of get us back to state. Now, when we say that, that comes with some caveats and some assumptions, because it does kind of depend on how much snow or rain we get, how big
Right.
of storms we get, are they small but numerous, or a couple big storms, dramatically impact our ability to store that water as well as recharge our groundwater basins and such. And so I think we're really planning. What that also means, I guess, if I put my flood hat on, 150% water year wreaks some havoc at the local level. Our reservoirs are extremely low, so from the major water systems, you know, that's an opportunity to collect a lot of water and store that, but at the local level, that kind of a water year does present some serious problems and some coordination. But part of this too is our,
I had it on. Could you help to put that in context with a recent event? So the last wet year that we had, which was 2011,
2011.
right? Okay. Roughly, where was that in terms of percentage?
As I recall, that was about 115% or whatever. And so the nice thing about that water year was a lot of snowpack.
Mm-hmm.
So it stayed very cool. And I think we were actually prepared to flood fight through July 1st. And only because we had a number of fairly cool, like 70-degree weather on the Southern Sierras did we actually make it out. I think that event was kind of historic, and a lot of agencies worked together to manage those flows, especially on the San Joaquin later in the year.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Good question.
So with that being said, the comment this morning with regard to Australia and trying to stay on point with regard to drought preparedness. As we go out and message across the state, we are trying to bring that drought flood nexus together to make sure that if it rains, we cannot look away from our drought efforts. We've made a lot of effort on conservation, but we have a long ways to go. I see opportunities for additional conservation throughout the state. Some are doing very well, but we also have some education and some more encouragement to do in various areas of the state.
Don't you have a report from Southern California, pictures that you've taken?
What's that?
Don't you have some a report on some pictures you've taken in Southern California?
Yes, I was in Glendale recently, and in between meetings, we were driving down the road and saw somebody replacing their front yard with grass, which gave me a little heartburn, and the new sprinklers and everything going in. And on the way back after lunch, we drove by, and the sprinklers were going, the gutter was flooding in, so I had to pull the car over, and everyone had to bear with me as we kind of worked through that challenge of we need to do some focused education in that area. And so we had an opportunity actually to talk with the Water District and some wholesalers in the region to kind of help, you know, kind of get that message out, or what we can do as partners to really press that issue a little farther in certain areas. And that was a perfect opportunity.
Did you stop and educate the resident?
I didn't. It was, you know, some of us have been working on drought a long time, but flinch pretty bad when we see stuff like that. But we are looking for opportunities for education along the way. What I want to do, so I think and I know there's some conservation discussion a little bit later, and I think that there's some things that we really do need to take it up to another level with regard to conservation, education. I think there's a different perspective out there in different areas of the state. And I think we're looking for opportunities to work with the board to make sure that we move forward on that line statewide. I think we're certainly challenged when we walk into areas which I call, you know, kind of these little regional ground zeros, when we see a lot of green flush grass on one side of the road and, you know, a tank on the other side of the road in somebody's front yard. That's really difficult to see, and, you know, the community has to work together to kind of address those local needs. Moving on to kind of the integrated regional water management grants that are out. So we have a drought funding recommendations online right now. We have an opportunity to come here on September 30th to hold a public workshop to receive comments on those draft recommendations. The deadline for comments is October 8th. So that represents $200 million going to you know, drought emergency response activities, about 110 projects and programs for 23 regions of the state under that program. So we're looking forward to that, that discussion and closing out those grants and getting on with pushing that money out. That's all part of the emergency legislation that was provided here earlier this year. I think, you know, part of the challenge is it going to be soon enough, and so I think staff has really spun up the process of working quite a bit faster with our local partners to put that money in play. Most of those resources, a wide variety of projects, and so I think the focus there is really helping prepare those communities for a dry 15 and future droughts down the line. Conservation, interties, recycling, all those kinds of projects are in play. The diverse set of projects, and definitely some emergency infrastructure.
One question. Will there be, projects are great, and all of these projects I expect will yield savings. But in terms of education, people are going to need to see that the projects are connected to outcomes that show the savings, like the report that's coming later as to whether use is going down or per capita use is going down or whatever. And so I think that's an area where we and the Water Board and DWR can work together to try to integrate some of those, make sure that those projects are actually yielding something that it can be useful in terms of education. Sometimes it's just projects, and that's very hard for people to kind of deal with.
Yeah, I agree. I think the education component and connecting them to the value of the money, that's whether it's state or local resources being put in play. I think that I saw a little bit of that this past week in Santa Fe Springs. They have a pretty robust conservation program, diverse, all the way from school to industry and business kind of applications. So I was pretty impressed with the actions that they have taken and swiped all their brochures and and they had Save Our Water all over their stuff. So
That's right. Remember,
so
saveourwater.com.
That's right. So we love that. Heads up also on the groundwater report. So as part of the governor's proclamation on November 1st, we have a groundwater report due. And so a lot of that, we've already turned in one report earlier this year. With the second proclamation, we have another assignment. So we're working pretty hard on that. Collecting that information, we've done additional outreach to really kind of collect up some of, say, the CASGEM information that wasn't being submitted, to reach out and make sure that data is flowing to us. A lot of the fall data that won't be available to us. We have encouraged others to collect that data a little early so we can get that information in that report. But so that's in draft now, and we'll be putting final touches on that for submittal. So that'll be presented not only to the Drought Task Force, but posted up on our website by the deadline. We've been working really closely with the board on a number of emergency response projects with regard to our drinking water program. We have a small amount of money for emergency response, and so what we've tried to do is set up our guidelines to support kind of fill gaps below the, say, less than 15 connection challenges that we have throughout the state, but also assist where we can the State Water Board drinking water program in implementing some of those bigger projects. Great. So we have our Lake Kachuma in play right now. I think all of us are hopefully about done with that one. That project is built and can be activated as needed. And so I think with their conservation measures, they've been able to delay the start of that project just a little bit. And right after this, we'll have a conference call with Public Works and Combs to find out how they're doing and ready to go. That's a critical project for that Central Coast community to make sure they maintain their water supplies. We've also identified about $4 million of additional